You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
And that's frightening to hear that, mostly you think these scams are overseas. You hear about these compounds where people are just, their whole focus is scams, but to actually hear that they have people on the ground who might pose as an FBI agent and come to your home, that's
brazen.
Fairly alarming.
Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Hacking Humans podcast brought to you by the Cyberwire. This is where every week we delve into the world of social engineering scams, phishing plots, and criminal activities that are grabbing headlines and causing significant harm to organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
We got some good stories to share this week, and later in the show, we are joined once again by Mallory Sofastaii. She is the consumer investigative reporter at WMAR 2 News in Baltimore. She's returning with some of the stories that she's been tracking. But first, a word from our sponsors at KnowBe4. We're not talking conspiracy theory when we say it's all connected. When it comes to InfoSec tools, effective integrations can make or break your security stack. Though not as common, the same should be true for security awareness training. Not only does KnowBe4 deliver the world's largest library of security awareness training, but they also provide a way to integrate the various elements of your existing security stack to help you strengthen your organization's security culture. Stay with us, and in a few minutes, we'll hear from our sponsors at KnowBe4 about how you can integrate security awareness with your tech stack like never before. All right, Joe, before we get to our stories here, we've got some follow-up. Why don't you kick things off for us here?
Dave, Kenneth writes in, we recently took a little bit of a break while I was traveling and you were doing some traveling.
Right.
So we ran some reruns.
Yeah.
And Kenneth writes in, says, "Hello, Dave and Joe. I was just listening to the encore presentation of the podcast dated October 11th. Joe mentioned creating separate email addresses, for example, for credit card companies.
Mm-hmm.
I am crazy enough to run my own email server. Not the one I'm using to send this, he notes. But he says, I create an alias for each organization who wants an email address. This means when someone loses my data or sells it, I can tell who is to blame. I can then delete the alias and send the problems into the trash. The worst example was when LinkedIn lost my data and I started getting sextortion email messages. I knew who was the root cause simply by looking at the to field. So in other words, he identified the email address because it was his own email address.
Right.
He realizes that not everyone can do this, and he must admit it does raise his workload, so it's not trivial to do this.
Right.
However, the few times I have not done this, I normally find myself unhappy that I did not.
Yeah.
So I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
If you're running your own email server, you should absolutely do this.
Yeah.
Somebody says, what's your email address? Oh, I got an email address just for you.
Yeah, there's a way to do this with Gmail. I think we've talked about before. You can just add a plus
right
to the first part of your email address. So like if my name was dave@gmail.com, I could do Dave plus spamcatcher@gmail.com.
Right. The only problem with that is everyone knows that trick, and all I have to do is take everything between the plus and the @ sign out, and I have your email address.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So
easy to automate.
Right. With this, I can just spin up an email address, and when that email address gets compromised, shut it down, and my server handles the rest of sending back bounces.
Right. No, that's better.
Yeah, it is. You can also just go out and create new Gmail addresses every time you do it. I have like 7 or 8 Gmail addresses.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kenneth, thank you for sending that in. We do appreciate it. Shall we jump into our stories here?
Yes, let's do that.
All right. I will kick things off for us. My story comes from Krebs on Security, which is, of course, a well-known security website written by Brian Krebs. And it's titled, The Fake Browser Update Scam Gets a Makeover. And Brian writes about this common scam that we've seen for a long time now where you'll be minding your own business, browsing on the internet, and you'll get a pop-up that says, your web browser needs to be updated.
I'm hearing Eddie Murphy in my head. I'm walking down the street, minding my own business.
Right. Your browser needs to be updated.
Right.
And so it tells you need to download some files, and you being a good, safe person on the internet, do so right away, because lots of people have told you that it's important to install patches and keep up to date.
Dave, I think we may have even said that here on this podcast
That's
once
right.
or twice.
But when you do, you are in fact taken to a place that is going to install malware on
Right.
your computer. The twist here, and what has updated this, is that the folks who are doing this, of course, they need a place to store their bad files.
Right. They need a hosting service for their malware, essentially.
Right. And they also need a hosting service that is willing to look the other way.
Right.
Or one that will not detect what they're up to.
Yes.
And the latest wrinkle in this scam is that evidently they are using some blockchain technology. They're using a place called Binance, which is a smart contract provider on
Right.
the blockchain. And basically they host their code on Binance. And so when you go to Binance, you download this code that should be part of a smart contract, but in fact is the malware code. You download the code from there, and then it gets executed, and they've got you.
Right. Now, this is something I don't even understand, because I understand blockchain,
Right.
but I've never taken the time to understand smart contracts. And this has to do with the Ethereum blockchain, or at least that's the first thing that pops into my mind is the Ethereum blockchain.
Yeah.
Because Bitcoin's blockchain, you can't do that with. Bitcoin's blockchain is just a blockchain.
Okay.
But Ethereum's is not. It has the smart contract feature.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't know how they're doing this. I'm sure it's possible. I know that you could put anything into a smart contract. I do know that. So the fact that they're putting other code in there or even executables or whatever is not surprising to me.
Yeah. What they say here, and I'm just going to quote from Brian Krebs' write-up on it, he says that he spoke to the head of security at Guardio Labs, and they said that the malicious scripts stitched into hacked WordPress sites will create a new smart contract on the BSC blockchain, starting with a unique attacker-controlled blockchain address and a set of instructions that defines the contract's functions and structure. When that contract is queried by a compromised website, it will return an obfuscated and malicious payload.
I see.
So it seems to me like they're using some of the capabilities of the blockchain and the smart contracts to generate the malware on the fly.
And what was it, the B something?
Binance Smart Chain, BSC.
Oh, so this is actually Binance's blockchain.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So what that does is it means so that it can't be detected with like a static analysis where they're just looking for code that they know or a file type that matches something that's known ahead of time, because the malware is being generated on the fly using the
instructions from the smart contract.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Now they've reached out to the folks at the Binance Smart Chain, and they're on it.
What are they going to do?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they've seen some of the methods that the folks use here, and they're on the lookout for it. And of course, if anything gets reported, they'll take it down right away. But I don't know the specifics of how they're taking it down, but they are, in good faith trying to do so.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I know that if there was something like that in Bitcoin, if there's a transaction in Bitcoin on that blockchain, and again, this is not a smart contract blockchain. So,
Yeah.
Again, I don't know how these smart contract blockchains work.
Right.
But once it's there, it's there. The
Yeah.
blockchain is supposed to be immutable. Now, that being said, there was an Ethereum event that happened with a smart contract years ago, where Ethereum actually rolled back the blockchain as a group. They agreed to roll back the blockchain and get rid of a piece of malicious code that was in the smart contracts of their blockchain.
Right.
And that's why you now have Ethereum and Ethereum Classic.
Right. I remember that. Yeah. There was a group who hung on to the old one, and then they forked off a new one.
They forked off a new one, right? And that became the new official Ethereum.
Okay.
But you can't you can't stop a blockchain. The original blockchain is still out there.
I need a T-shirt that says that. You can't stop a blockchain. Sounds like a 70s disco movie, right?
It does, yeah.
Once that blockchain is running, you can't stop a blockchain, Joe.
That's right. You have to say baby after that.
Yeah, just watch me. Watch me. Yeah. So as you, I do not know all of the nitty-gritty details of how smart contracts work. And honestly, it's been a while since we've even talked about it over on CyberWire. I mean, it seems like they had their moment in the sun, like a lot of this stuff, and it's just sort of fallen off the regular conversations anyway, which could just mean that they're in a state of equilibrium and they're doing
what they do, and they're doing it well.
Exactly. Right. They figured out the glitches, and the people who need it, they know where it is and how to use it. Of course, I suppose this story points to something different from that. Somebody's figured out a way to take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah, it's just another way to exploit. It's my old hammer analogy, Dave. It's a tool, and somebody's using it for evil.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what Brian Krebs here says. He wraps up this article and he says, more than a decade ago, this site published Krebs's 3 rules for online safety, of which rule number 1 was, if you didn't go looking for it, don't install it.
Yeah, that's a great rule, by the way.
Right.
All those rules are great. I can't remember what the other 2 rules are, but I remember looking at that post and going, these are all great rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and in this case, what that means is if something pops up on your screen and says you must install this now, don't.
Right. Yeah.
Consult with someone else, or there's there's no reason you have to do it now.
Right.
Take the time and scrutinize it.
What's interesting is that the browser update is being hosted. That page is being hosted on a compromised WordPress site.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it looks like your browser is telling you time to update.
Right. Right. Yeah, and there's certainly no shortage of those.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. Joe, what do you have for us?
Dave, I've got something a little strange, I think.
Yeah.
My story comes from Kate Nibbs over at Wired, and I have a new term for you, Dave. Obituary pirates.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sounds like a great group of guys, right? Right off the bat.
Sounds like a heavy metal band.
There was a heavy metal band named Obituary.
Okay.
A death metal band.
All right.
Some controversy. I think I actually interviewed one of their guitarists when I was in college.
Really?
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is nothing as interesting as that. What's happening here is Kate Nibbs is talking about a story from one of her friends. Her friend had a classmate die unexpectedly.
Okay.
So what do you do when you hear that somebody from your past has died unexpectedly?
I go looking for the obituary.
You go looking for the obituary. That's exactly what I do. I Google it, and that's what Kate's friend did.
Yeah.
Looking for the official obituary, but Kate's friend really had to look for this obituary because there is what Kate calls a slimy cottage industry around obituaries and these obituary pirates. And what they do is they scrape sites that host obituaries and then just republish the obituary on their sites.
Yeah.
These site owners are then good at search engine optimization so that their site comes up first in the results.
This happened to me.
Did this happen to you?
Yeah. A family member on my wife's side of the family passed away. And I went looking for the obituary. And, when someone passes, you kind of get in this mode of waiting for the obituary to publish.
Right.
Because sometimes it takes a couple days.
Yep.
So you're just kind of checking in to see. You're looking for information about the funeral, about services, where to send things, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And this was someone out of town. And the first thing that popped up when things started popping up was a YouTube video.
A YouTube video.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting because we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But these guys are using the traffic that's driven to their sites to charge a premium for ads, and they're selling these ads. There was one mentioned in this article about selling a topical vitamin C cream.
Huh.
I don't know if that's how vitamin C works. Or if you're just rubbing something on your skin and hoping that the placebo effect makes you feel better.
Right,
they
until you get rickets.
Right, rickets. I think that's vitamin D, isn't it?
Could be. I don't know.
Vitamin C is scurvy. I know that.
Yeah, there you go.
So, sympathy card, they also sell sympathy gifts like candles or flowers. They just pocket the money from this. these obituary pirates. But more recently, Dave, these pirates are making YouTube videos, just like the one you saw.
Yeah.
And these are low-quality videos. And Kate tells a story about one of them is just a man sitting alone, and he's speaking directly to the camera. Other people narrate obituaries over corny slideshows of candles and photos and the deceased from their social media platforms, right?
Yep.
So these guys are going out. They're making YouTube videos. They're uploading them to YouTube, and they're making money off of people's obituaries.
And that's what I witnessed. I saw this YouTube video, and it was just a guy, looked like he was sitting at his dining room table in front of a laptop. Nothing special about it.
Right.
Looked like probably someone's of Southeast Asian descent.
Okay.
And was just read the obituary. This struck, my first reaction was, what the heck is this? Right. Like, what, why? It just seems to me so ghoulish.
Right. Well, I would agree that it's rather ghoulish, but Dave, there's money to be made here. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Kate reached out to a number of the proprietors of these accounts, probably even the guy that you saw reading your family member's obituary.
Right.
None of them responded.
Yeah.
Are you shocked by that? I'm not shocked by that.
No.
I mean, that's exactly the response I would have expected. I don't think Kate's shocked by that either.
No.
There is a woman named Jessica Koth who Kate spoke to. She is the director of public relations for the National Funeral Directors Association.
Okay.
Every trade has their national association.
Sure.
Including funeral directors.
Yep.
And Jessica says these videos are not sanctioned or authorized by the funeral home or by the family of the person who died. I would imagine they would be quite upsetting to the families involved. I couldn't agree more. I mean, did you talk to anybody about the video, or did you just keep that to yourself?
I told my wife.
Yeah, I mean, but,
not immediately though.
Right.
Actually, no. My wife. I did not mention it to my wife because she didn't need anything additionally to upset her.
Because this was a family member of your wife. So was it a close family member, if I can pry?
Close enough.
Close enough that, I don't want to see some...
Yeah. So I kept it to myself, but probably about a week later, she mentioned to me that at the services for this person, someone had mentioned this. And I said, oh, yes, I had seen that. I saw it too. And I just, I chose to keep it to myself just because... Why?
Right. There's no sense in bringing this up to a grieving family.
Not at that moment.
It doesn't make anything better.
Right. It's exactly, again, just how ghoulish and unsettling it is.
Yeah.
But it makes me think, is an obituary protected in any way?
We're going to get there.
I don't know.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
Because Kate was talking about some Reddit posts where people are talking about this practice.
Yeah.
And they're wondering why it's happening and whether they can do anything to stop it. And one person says, these people are monetizing our beloved ones' deaths.
Yeah.
Terrible that they're doing this. But there have been some consequences. So in 2019, there was a Canadian company called Afterlife that scraped and republished obituaries. And they were ordered to pay 20 million Canadian dollars. I don't know how many real dollars that is, Dave. But,
oh, boy. Right. Please, when you write your letters, address them to Joe.
I mean nothing to our good friends, our neighbors to the north of the border.
Yeah.
I don't know how many American dollars that would be, but it's pretty close, actually.
Right.
And they sued and they won $20 million from these people. And the reason for their victory was because of copyright infringement. They said these people were just scraping and republishing obituaries and publishing photos that they didn't have permission to publish. So this company was fined $20 million.
Wow.
These YouTubers are essentially summarizing the information.
Oh.
And a quote from the article, it says, while distasteful, it is not illegal.
Right.
So they're not committing any crimes here. But they are doing something that is going to hook into us. I mean, you saw the video of your family member's obituary. Somebody else in your family saw the video. There were probably some people that saw the video that didn't talk about it.
Right.
That you didn't hear about it. This practice is ongoing, and I don't know that there's anything you can do to stop it other than not look at it.
Yeah.
Right?
I also wonder if it's, and I understand I'm treading on dangerous ground here, but I wonder if part of what set me back on my heels is just kind of the cultural mismatch, right? Like someone who I don't know, who I will never meet, who is from around the world, who has no interest in this at all, does this, that it makes it feel somehow more invasive than, if, I don't know, if my local newscaster, right, were posting these kinds of things and said that they were doing it as a tribute or something like that, it probably wouldn't set me off as quickly as some random stranger from the other side of the world.
Right.
And I guess that's just human nature. I don't know if that's right or not, and I suppose it could speak to, some biases or whatever that I have hardwired into me, but it's just an interesting dynamic, and I just think it's awful, and it makes me sad that this is where we are.
Right. This is this is what the internet has brought us.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's any legal ramifications here. The platforms YouTube could certainly say, we're not, but then you can't say we're not allowing obituary videos, because what if you're a funeral home and you want to put up obituary videos on YouTube that are actually the tributes that the family has authorized?
Right.
You can't do that either. I think it's just something we have to live with.
Yeah,
so whatever you do, don't pay to light a candle on an obituary site, right? Never do that.
Right.
I mean, that's like paying to win a game. Yeah, it's even worse than that, because all you're doing is
well, see what they, find the legit obituary.
Right.
Most people say, in lieu of flowers, send a donation to such and such an organization.
Yes.
I imagine the floral industry aren't big fans of that, but aside from that...
That's fine with me, by the way, Dave. The floral industry died out tomorrow, I'd be happy. Same with the diamond industry. I think those are two things we spend way too much money on, flowers and diamonds.
All right. So, you can find something that was near and dear to the dearly departed's life and make a donation in their name.
Yeah, and
just do that.
If you're close enough, you can make the family dinner for a night or something.
There you go.
That's really the best thing I think you can do.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have a link to this story. As you say, this was from the folks over at Wired, written by Kate Nibbs. We will have a link to that in the show notes. Joe, it is time to move on to our catch of the day.
Dave, our catch of the day comes from me.
Okay.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I told you earlier today that I have a bunch of Gmail addresses.
Right.
And Gmail has sent out these notices to all its users that beginning December 1st of this year, if you haven't logged into your Gmail address in 6 months, they're just going to delete the Gmail address. And it won't be available for anybody else to ever use either. So it's gone. They're going to just close them down, archive the name, and delete the content.
Okay.
So I've been going around to the email addresses I care about and reactivating them and signing into them. And I did that with one of my old email addresses, and I found an email from a number of years ago that made it into my inbox.
Wow.
Completely by all the spam filters.
Okay.
The subject line was A Job W, all one word and all lowercase, and the text was FLS. The fish was actually in an attached JPEG, which I have posted here into our document that we read from.
Okay.
So I'm going to let you, it's kind of self-explanatory as to what it is.
Yeah, it says it's from the International Organization for Migration. And it says, Dear Winner, in collaboration with the European Conglomerate Oil and Gas Corporation, wish to inform you the 4 lucky winners in this year's annual lotto draws. Your email address emerged alongside 3 others as a 5th category winner. You do not require participating or buying a ticket in order to become a winner. It is a free lotto lucky draws. You have won a total amount of 49,000 British pounds in fight against European Migrant Crisis Awareness Campaign and support. The following particulars are attached to your lotto payment order: serial batch number, winning number, reference number. forward the listed details below to email mufundogwali@representative.com for immediate commencement of your payment process.
Aha.
Your full name, residential or working address, winning and reference numbers, telephone and mobile number, age. To South African mediator, Johannesburg, South Africa, Mr. Mufundo Gwala. Furthermore, for security measures, we strongly advise you keep this information confidential until payment has been received successfully. Wow. Okay.
So I didn't respond to this.
Well, you missed out. I mean,
did.
it's been years now.
It's been years. So somebody else probably got my lottery. There are no lottery winnings, Dave. I find it interesting that the address or the art on this is from the International Organization for Migration, but the return address actually says Oil and Gas Corporation and European Base Oil/Lubricants Conference, EMC, celebrates annual, actually it's not a return address, it's just a whole, it looks like a return address, but it's a whole thing about some oil and gas conference.
Right. Like they got their spam mixed up.
Right.
They blended two of them or something like that.
I don't know. This is, maybe this is just intended to confuse people.
Yeah, or it could help make it get past a spam filter by having more stuff. You know, that happens sometimes.
So yeah, there's one of the big scams that still runs around is a lottery scam. If you didn't buy a ticket, you didn't win. I didn't buy any lottery tickets that pay out in British pounds.
Right.
So there's no chance of me having won a lottery out of the UK.
Yeah.
So this is obviously just a scam. If you send these people any information, all they do is tell you about how much money you have there, and you're going to have to pay some money to get it out. Just a basic advance fee scam.
Right. All right. Well, we would love to hear from you. If there's something you'd like us to consider for the show, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@n2k.com. Back to the concept of integrations. KnowBe4's Security Coach uses standard APIs to quickly and easily integrate with your existing security products from vendors like Microsoft, CrowdStrike, Cisco, and dozens of others. Security Coach analyzes alerts your security stack generates to identify events related to any risky security behavior from your users. With this information, you can set up real-time coaching campaigns to target risky users based on those events from your network, endpoint, identity, or web security vendors. These campaigns enable you to coach your users at the moment the risky behavior occurs, with contextual security tips delivered via Microsoft Teams, Slack, or email. With 35 integrations and counting, Security Coach delivers the insight you need to improve your organization's security culture. Learn more about Security Coach at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. Joe, it is always a pleasure to welcome back to our show Mallory Sofastaii. She is a consumer investigative reporter at WMAR 2 News here in Baltimore. Mallory, thank you so much for taking the time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave and Joe.
So you have been doing some really interesting reporting lately that is right up our alley here, and we're lucky to have you back to describe some of the stories you've been working on. What can you share with us today?
So recently we had two stories where I went to the FBI Baltimore field office to talk with their agents there. I had reached out to them because for these two scams in particular, I've been receiving a massive amount of emails, web hits on previous stories. And the first one involves tech support scams. And what I find so interesting about that is how these particular scams have evolved. You know, we're all kind of familiar with the emails that come out of nowhere. Oh, we're renewing your virus software for a few $100s. Click here to unsubscribe. You've probably seen those, right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So instead of that, you know, where it was a few $100s or, you know, people would panic and be like, oh no, I don't want my credit card charged again. So they would, you know, go through the process, and through that process, they would lose a few $100s. Well, now it's evolved into people losing their life savings, their retirement accounts, their investments. And how it's kind of working is it's around the same framework where they say, there's an issue with your computer, there's a pop-up that comes up, you think that your computer is frozen, you need to call the Microsoft support number right away. And it's interesting because we've seen this happen on Google Chromebooks, and that should be the first red flag, but you're just not thinking about that when you can't do anything on your computer and you kind of panic, right?
Right.
So these people, they call the phone number, they're connected with someone. The person immediately answers tech support. They don't identify which company they're with because who knows how many people they're doing this with or, where they've put out their feelers. And then it just kind of goes from there. The conversations can last several hours and they try to tell you, listen, this is really urgent. Someone's accessed your computer. They're stealing your information now. We need to work together in order to stop this. We need to secure your financial accounts, which have also been compromised. So, here's what I need you to do by downloading this software, which ends up being a desktop sharing program. They ask the people to sign into their financial accounts, not knowing that the person on the phone can see them accessing their accounts. And then sometimes they can be really sophisticated where since it's a desktop sharing app, they might put something up on the screen. So, if you're looking at your computer screen right now, you see a window, but behind that, what they're doing is they're transferring money within your own account. They might move it. They might do like a Zelle transfer outside. Sometimes we've seen where they transfer your money from your savings account to your checking account. How does it work really? It's an overpayment scam where they start to panic. They start to say, I reimbursed you too much. I refunded you too much money. My boss is going to be so angry. I need you to transfer it back. Please. And they beg and it goes on. And, I need you to send me that money back to me. But really what it was your own money. They were just moving your savings to your checking. So it made it seem like you received a refund when that never happened. And then instead, now you're sending your money to the scammer. So they give all kinds of different reasons, but the reported losses are through the roof with this scam right now. When I talked to the FBI Baltimore field office, he said it's not uncommon. We talked to Special Agent Keith Custer. He said it's not uncommon to see $600,000, $800,000, $1 million in loss per victim. And that's because these people just panic and they give access to all of these accounts, and these scammers have no problem staying on the phone with you as long as possible to try to get as much as they can from you.
Well, it's their job, really, right?
Right.
That's what they do for a living.
It's so awful too, how much money that these people lose, and how this particular scam has become so lucrative. And I know, you guys have this tech background, and for the people that I interview, many of them are elderly. They don't really understand what this virus software does or what these notifications mean. All they know is they want access to their accounts and their computers, and they don't want anyone to steal their money when instead they're somehow giving it away.
Right. We had a story we covered recently where that was exactly this scam that you're describing. But one of the things that struck me was when the victim called in and thought she was talking to Microsoft, the person pretending to be Microsoft said, "Let me transfer you to your bank's security team," right? And pretended to transfer the call, but of course it was just transferring her to another scammer. And now she thought she was talking to someone at her bank who was trying to protect her, but of course it was just another one of the scammers.
I've heard that time and time again where, it's multi-level. They keep transferring you to someone else. Oh, I need you to speak with my supervisor. Here's the person in charge of securing accounts. And what's even more concerning too is the FBI agent that I spoke with, he said, we've actually seen people come to the victims' homes in person. What they'll say is, because your information has been compromised, it's being used in an illegal scheme, a money laundering scheme. I'm going to send an FBI agent to your house to collect this money that, is involved in this scheme. And then, we'll be able to clear your name. And that's frightening to hear that, mostly you think these scams are overseas. You hear about these compounds where people are just, their whole focus is scams, but to actually hear that they have people on the ground who might pose as an FBI agent and come to your home, that's
brazen.
fairly alarming.
Yeah. Yeah. You had another story about a romance scam. What was going on with that one?
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like we keep revisiting this, every few months or several times a year. But we wanted to get this one out around The Golden Bachelor, the new ABC show, because we know a lot of people who are older, they're looking for love. They want to find their special person. And with romance scams in particular, a lot of the victims are widows or widowers. And we came in contact with this woman in Frederick, Maryland. She's a widow. Her husband had passed a few years prior. It was a really kind of devastating situation where it was a medical incident and he passed away right in front of her. And she was very kind of traumatized by that. And it was obviously upsetting. So she's been leaning on her friends. And one way she's been able to keep in contact with her friends is through Words with Friends, the gaming site where it's almost like a virtual Scrabble.
Right.
But that's where she was contacted by an individual. He said his name was Michael, just randomly messaged her saying, would you want to play with me? And they played Words with Friends. And he immediately asked her to continue the conversation on WhatsApp. And that's kind of the first red flag is, when you meet someone on an online dating site on, Facebook or even Words with Friends, they try to move you to a different platform, maybe one that's not being closely monitored. So something like WhatsApp, where it's more private. They continue talking over several years. They develop this relationship. He says, he's an architect over in Turkey. He has a son around the same age as hers. And that's something else we've seen where a lot of the times these romance scammers will mimic the profile of the person that they're targeting. So yes, I'm also widowed. This, person claiming to be Michael said same thing. His wife died suddenly in a medical emergency, and it's just been him taking care of his son. Well, throughout the course of their conversations, which spanned several years, he made up a story about his son being in a bad car accident and all of his money had to go to these treatments and these blood transfusions, etc. Can you help me with that? And she is a very religious person and she feels, she kept saying to me, I'm a Christian and I want to help people. And so I sent him money and I have no regrets about doing that. And then it evolved now into an investment opportunity. She wants to leave money to her kids. She had $35,000. He convinced her to send that into this investment company and started sending transaction statements showing how her $35,000 suddenly morphed into over $900,000. And wow, what a great investment that was. And so she came to the point where it was like, okay, now that it's grown so much, I want to be able to take some of that money out. And that's when they hit you with the fees. Oh, well, in order to do that, it's going to be $17,000. It turns out that this company is now in the United Kingdom and you're going to have to pay customs and import fees, etc. The money just keeps tallying up. The excuses keep growing. And so over the course of speaking with her, it got complicated because what we didn't realize is she still believes Michael is real and Michael is who he says he is. And, her daughter was trying to tell her, this man is scamming you. These transaction statements are fake and, he's just trying to deceive you. And it's been really hard for her to believe that someone could be that cruel and do that to her over, the course of speaking several years. And she really was trying to convince her daughter into letting Michael visit and asking me if I would talk to her daughter about that. And I tried telling her too, this is what happens. There's like this playbook that the FBI also went through with me and I conveyed to her how these scammers operate, whereas they, move your conversations to a different platform. They mimic your profile. They love bomb you where they're constantly messaging you and calling you and saying all these sweet things and just kind of messing with your head. You just develop this relationship. Sometimes they ask you to keep it private. Let's not go public just yet. It's too early. And then they get into the money aspect. That was kind of hard to hear, and even in speaking with the FBI agent, she says that's the hardest part of my job is trying to convince some of these victims that these people aren't real. And it's just so hard to believe that when you've developed this kind of relationship with someone.
And she is still convinced to this day that Michael is a real person.
She is, yes.
Wow.
Her daughter has her.
It is.
Yeah.
And this is a long game as well, years in the making for
Years.
pulling this scam.
And you can only imagine how many people they're doing this to at once. All you have to do is send a few messages a day, keep in contact. So they could be doing this to a number of people and just trying to acquire new people as well. But they really do. They invest time and if someone were to ask you off the bat who you didn't know, can you send me a few $1,000s? You're going to say no. But if you fall into this narrative of, oh my gosh, he has a son the same age as mine. I can't imagine if that was my son, Peter, who was in this terrible car accident and now I can't afford treatment for him. So they just keep building this web that these victims keep falling deeper into. And, then it's hard for the family members, the actual people who are there to tell them, it's been a lie. All these years, it's been a lie.
As Joe said, I mean, one of the things that strikes me is just what a long game this is. I would say I really hadn't considered the fact that these folks could be playing something like this out over years, days, weeks, months, certainly, but to be in it for this long. And as you point out, that really establishes this sense of trust. This is someone I've known for years. They've been through me through good and bad, through thick and thin. And why wouldn't I help them? It's really fascinating.
Yeah. And we've seen these scammers, they isolate that individual, maybe you shouldn't be talking to this person every day. Don't tell this person about the money that I've asked you about. Wouldn't it be a great surprise when you're able to gift them this amount of money later on? But they try to isolate the person so that the ruse isn't up. They don't want other people from the outside to realize who the victim is speaking with, because as an outsider, you see it much more clearly than you would when you are that invested.
In the time that you've been tracking this in your job there at WMAR TV2 News, have you sensed a growth in sophistication with this? What sort of evolution have you seen with the scams that you've been tracking?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, now it's strictly cryptocurrency, right? We used to see only gift cards, and still, that might be like leading up to the big ask where they ask for gift cards and you go and you buy them and you scratch off the back and they take a picture and send it. And immediately the scammer will wipe those cards out. And then if they think, okay, well, if I can get them to send these gift cards, then maybe I can get larger sums via cryptocurrency. And even with the tech support scams, when we were talking to Special Agent Keith Custer, he said it's not uncommon to see older people at these Bitcoin ATM machines feeding in $100 bills and then sending, thousands of dollars via Bitcoin. And I think it's because many people, it's a complex thing to understand with cryptocurrency. We're not used to it. It's still not commonly used as a payment method. So if someone's walking you through it, they stay with you on the phone, they tell you exactly which Bitcoin ATM is within your area, the closest one. And, if that one's not working, go to this one. They ask for your location so they can direct you. And the whole time they're on the phone with you, walking you through it, answering your questions, and you almost think that they're there to help you.
What are your recommendations for those of us who are, friends and family? I always think about, my own parents and loved ones. What sort of things should we be telling them?
I talk about this all the time with my mom. She is a widow. She was on these dating sites and she was getting these messages, and I could clearly immediately see that they weren't who they said they were. And that was because maybe the photo was too good, or a lot of the times I might just question, people in military uniform are big targets because they know that Americans respect the military and officers in uniform. Maybe some women have a thing for that, but
Sure.
that seems to be a big target where they will take those photos and use that as their catfish almost. So I encourage people to have these conversations with their loved ones, but even if they're not searching for love, if, like I said, this woman met this man on Words with Friends, I would never assume that you would meet a love interest on a online gaming site, but they're trying to get you wherever they can. They just need that kind of introduction in order to start building that rapport. So you need to have those conversations with anyone, and I try to tell my mom each time I come across one of these situations, like, please just talk to me about it. Don't be ashamed. Let's have an open conversation. Never send money to someone else. Even if you think it's real, consult with a friend, consult with a family member first before you send anything. Because like we said with cryptocurrency, it's becoming increasingly harder to get that money back.
So Mallory, you said in the story you had about the tech support scam that people were getting their retirement funds cleared out and other bank accounts as well. Is there any recourse for these folks? Do they have any way of getting this money back, or is it just gone? Can it be tracked through the banking system?
It's hard to say. In my experience, most of these people aren't able to recover that money unless the FBI decides to pursue a case. They identify patterns and then they hand it off to the DOJ and those people are prosecuted, but then restitution can take several years. So unless it's reversed immediately, the likelihood of recovering that money is very low. But if you do send money and you do notify your bank right away, there is the chance that they might be able to intervene, intercept. I mean, don't even go immediately to the FBI, because how that system works is you file a complaint, it goes to their IC3, their Internet Crime Complaint Center, and then IC3 sends it out to the individual bureaus. So that takes time, right? Contact your bank immediately. You want someone who can act quickly. Contact, the investment company, whoever it is that has this money or was overseeing it for you, and do what you can. Contact local police. In my experience, it depends with different agencies. They might have better financial crimes units or, more staffing or resources there so that they can pursue these cases. But you just want to act as quickly as possible.
And then was it fair to say contact folks like you, your local investigative reporter who often has success getting action from some of these other agencies when people feel like they're not being heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Even if we're unable to help you recover that money, we can at least do what we can to spread the word about it so that more people don't encounter the same situation. I've also seen too where, banks are required by federal law to reimburse victims when there's an unauthorized transaction, meaning someone goes into your bank account and steals it. Now, if you transfer the money out, not always will they reimburse you. But sometimes, if I send an email and we clearly point that out, it can help. Or you can go to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is another resource for consumers.
All right. Well, Mallory Sofastaii is an investigative reporter at WMAR 2 News in Baltimore. Mallory, thank you so much for joining us again and taking the time for us. Always a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you both.
We want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, we want to thank our sponsors at KnowBe4. They are experts at enabling a fully integrated approach to security awareness training. That is our show. We want to thank all of you for listening. Of course, we want to thank the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at isi.jhu.edu. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. Our senior producer is Jennifer Eiben. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpe. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Joe Kerrigan.
Thanks for listening.